and my golf club, they form a nice straight line. There's the radius of my swing, okay? And if any point in time in my swing, this were to bend or pull in, you can see how that club now is moving further away from the ground. Hi there, Darren Falk here again with Break 90 Golf. And today we're going to be talking about thin iron shots. What are the three things that cause a thin shot and a couple of simple ways that you can fix it forever. So stick around and let's get started. Okay, so one thing I want to go over before we get into what causes the thin shot is something that I always hear on my lesson tee. Every time I see a golfer hit a ball a little bit thin, I always hear them tell themselves, I picked my head up. And I can tell you right now, there's almost a guarantee you did not do that. There is nothing magical that can happen of me trying to stay looking down at the golf ball. It is not a matter of me looking at the target too soon. Okay, so the first thing that causes this thin shot is going to be my arms. So as I come into the golf ball, or as I set up to the golf ball here, I'm setting up my arms pretty straight. And if I were to come into the golf ball and my arms were to bend or separate, notice how that's moving the club away from the ground, and that's going to result in me hitting just the very top of the golf ball. Now, oftentimes that happens because my club's going to hit the ground back here behind the golf ball, being the chunk shot. Okay, and we cover that in another video, and I'll put that here as well if you want to check that out. If you struggle with both chunks and the thin shots, you're going to want to check that out first. So the first thing is going to be making sure that we keep these arms very straight. So as we look at my left arm and my golf club, they form a nice straight line. There's the radius of my swing, okay? And if any point in time in my swing, this were to bend or pull in, you can see how that club now is moving further away from the ground, right? So that's number one, is going to be the arms. The second thing is going to be my left wrist or my lead wrist. I could have my arms pretty straight, but I could still cause this club to start moving up too soon. And that's going to happen if my lead wrist starts to bend or sort of a cupping motion here. Okay, so that's going to be the second piece. And then the third thing that we're going to be focused on is with my body. So as I set up to the golf ball here, we play golf on a tilted angle, so therefore I'm set up with a bit of a bend, forward bend this way. And in my swing, if I were to at some point in time, either in the backswing or in the downswing, lose that inclination to the ground, this club is going to be moving further away from the golf ball. Okay, so those are going to be the really two or three. We can put the arms and the wrist sometimes and keep that as one. But those are going to be the main issues that I see causing the thin shots. Okay, so now that we've established those, now let's go ahead and talk about how do we fix it. Okay, so the first piece that we're going to be focused on is with my arms. And again, if we have any arm bend coming through the golf ball, okay, that's going to move the club away from the ground. If we don't hit the ground, then we're going to hit just the top of the golf ball. So simply put, what we want to be doing and having a feel is that we keep our arms completely straight as we're practice hitting these little shots. Now, I'll hear all the time people say, oh, do I need to feel very soft with the arms? Or we looked at some professional golfers and Jordan Spieth and Lee Westwood. Yes, they have a little bit of arm bend. If you're struggling to break 90 and you're not hitting solid shots, do not worry about feeling like your arm is bent or having some freedom. We need to have some good structure first, and as we're hitting more solid shots down the road, maybe we can get rid of that feel a little bit. But for right now, I want you to feel really rigidly straight. So as I'm setting up to the golf ball here, I almost want to feel like my elbows are trying to actually touch. Okay, there's a great picture of Ben Hogan in his book, 5 Lessons, where he actually has these bands wrapped around his arms, okay? And if you look at some of the old pictures, the old videos, you would see guys sometimes even put like a belt wrapped around the arms, okay? So really feeling like my arms are squeezing, my elbows are squeezing together. And I would start with just hitting some small swings with that feel, okay? And if those arms don't bend at all, it's going to be virtually impossible for me to miss the ground. Now, a couple of great training aids out there. One in particular, which I love, is the Tour Striker Smart Ball. But I've seen people do this with balloons too, any Nerf ball that you want to get. And simply put, all we're going to do is that's going to give us a little bit of a feedback to where we put this right below my elbows, right in my forearms here. And that gives us some nice feedback where if there was any bending of my elbows, obviously this ball is going to fall out. So the feel that I have is that I'm literally trying to pop this ball back and through. And again, to start off with, I would just start off with 30, 40-yard shots, just focused on that feel right there of keeping my arms completely straight. We can feel like this left arm and the club form a straight, like steel rod. It's all one unit, one piece. And I'm just going to make little swings back and through. And again, just practicing to start with, brushing the ground. Okay? Now, the second thing that we talked about a little bit was with the arms. I'm sorry, with the hand. Okay? And that is, I could have the arms straight, but if my wrists are moving too much, this club now, as it gets to the golf ball, is already starting to move up. Okay? So, sticking in with these small shots, I would just have players keep the arms straight, squeeze the elbows together, and now as I set up, I'm going to push the hands a little bit forward, and my goal in the swing now is keeping the arms straight, and when I finish here, that my hands are still ahead of the golf club. That will ensure that this left wrist, my lead wrist, didn't cup at all. And again, as you can see, if I do that, that's when the club starts to move up too soon. Okay, so the second piece I graduate to, I got my arms straight. And now I'm just going to think in terms of really feeling that left, my lead wrist here is pretty locked in. And again, just going to make a little swing back and through, ensuring that I hit the ground. Okay, so those are the first two. Now, the third piece here that we're going to work on is going to be this inclination to the ground. Okay, and again, what I mean by that is that I set up to the golf ball here. Right? I don't like the term stay in your spine angle. It's not really correct. So I prefer that my angles to the ground here stays constant throughout the swing. Okay? If I were to swing back and I were to stand up at all, okay, well now I have to try to get lower to get back to the golf ball. So that can happen both in the backswing and or in the follow through. All right, so a couple of really, really good drills. My favorite drill for this feel is going to be the head against the wall. So if I were set up to the golf ball here, and I were to imagine my head up against the wall, my goal is going to be to swing back and keep my head up against that wall, going back and coming through. Okay? Now, as you notice that, I'm going to put my club across my shoulders. What do you notice here about my shoulders as my head stays against the wall? In order to do that, my left shoulder has to work down and get lower than the right shoulder. And then in the follow through, it's going to be the opposite. My right shoulder is lower to the ground than the left. You can see my right shoulder pretty much took the place of my left. So again, this is another simple drill. If I were to go ahead and put my club across my shoulders and have the ball down the ground, I'm essentially going to feel that left shoulder working down towards the ground. I wouldn't want it towards the golf ball. That's going to be a little excessive. But it's not moving level to the ground this way. I'm going to rotate, left shoulder down, and as I come through, I feel like the right shoulder just takes the place of the left. And then if I were to do that with a golf club, left shoulder down and right shoulder down. Okay, so if we were to summarize this lesson today, really could really boil this down to two simple thoughts or simple keys. First one is going to be arms straight. I start with them with a little straighter. Okay, I don't want to set up to the golf ball with my arms bent apart. I'm going to start with them straight, and I'm going to feel like this club is basically staying stretched away from me, back and through. Okay, and then along with that in the follow through, just making sure that this club isn't passing the hands too quickly. Okay, so those would be my first two words. And the second two, I could just simply say that my shoulder down. Okay, so shoulder down on the backswing. We look like this. And shoulder down on the follow through. Okay, the shoulders working, turning down, back and through, helps me to keep that inclination to the ground. And my arms staying straight helps me to maintain the radius of my golf swing. Okay, so I'll go ahead and hit one now. Again, start out with just some short swings back, short swings through, then gradually start to lengthen out my swing just a little bit, but still with those same cues. Arms straight and shoulder down. Arms are straight, shoulder down. Arms are straight, shoulder down. And that's going to ensure that my club hits the ground. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. I hope you found this helpful. If you did like this content, you would like to see more, please make sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Any comments you had on this drill or anything else, please go ahead and mention it in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Thanks so much.